The views expressed here are those of the authors and do not in any way represent the views of SafeerTV.
Welcome back. On the flip side, ladies, we have surah in the Quran that says, men are in charge of women by right of what Allah has given one over the other and what they spend for maintenance from their wealth. Is this ayah taken out of context, do you think?
Is it taken out of context? Well, like everything else, they've been taking things out of context quite a bit, those men. But I don't know. I mean, the way that you read, can you read it again in English with this translation?
In English, we have the translation of men are in charge by right of what Allah has given one over the other and what they spend for maintenance from their wealth.
Funny, because in the Arabic, how does it start? بما فضل الله بعضهم على بعض.
الرجال قوامون على النساء
بما فضل الله بعضهم على بعض وبما أنفقوا من أموال or something.
Yes, so there's a limitation which is nafq, which is
spent, the providing,
yes.
Because they provide for the family. But the first part goes that because somehow God prefers. I mean, and if we read it literally, but then again, we're not really interpreters of the Quran. I'm not, and I speak Arabic fluently since childhood, and I read the Quran, whatever, like every other Muslim. But then still, when reading the Quran, doesn't mean that I can interpret it. We're not theologists, exactly.
Yeah. So do you think men use this as an excuse, that section of the Quran, to get away with certain types of behaviour?
I mean, it's possible. Like anything, people can take things out of context and use it as a means of being cruel or having a level of control over someone. It's very easy to turn around to someone that's got faith and say that this is what God says. And if you go against that,
you're going against God.
You're going against God. You're going against your faith. So yes, people can do it. It's realistic that some people use it as a form of control. It's
obvious.
Yeah, well, they do. But see, if you look at the other side of the world, see the non-Muslim world, how are men relating to their women? Don't we see similar behaviour pattern of control, abuse, beatings, domestic violence, and so on? What are they using those men then to support them in doing those unokay activities? I mean, as we said, we're not interpreters of the Quran. And reading that verse, and I'm going to pause at the point where it says for maintenance. Why is the word maintenance in there? If there is a preference, a superiority issue, why is there maintenance? Because elsewhere, everywhere else in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us, Man amala salihan min dhakarin aw untha. Whoever does righteous deeds, be they men or women, Allah will give them equal ajr. So spiritually, we are equal in the eyes of Allah.
Yeah.
But physically, He's given us different roles to play in society.
And it's a bit tricky because in today's society, women are providers as well for families.
Indeed,
so we bring in money, we bring in food to to the table as well. So how does that fit in here?
Well, some people are saying that this operates both ways. This verse, I'm not sure. Like I said, I've not delved into the analysis, the meaning, and researched this verse heavily. But what I see is a lot of men using this to beat up their women in the Islamic communities or Muslim communities. But then take away Islam and see what men are doing elsewhere in the world, you'll find the same thing is going on.
Abuse is everywhere.
And again,
abusive people, they will find their excuses wherever it is.
And they'll use whatever reasons to say it's their right to do so.
And again, as we reiterated, we're not interpreters of the Quran. We're just merely stating that there are sections in our society that use, and not just our society, in Christianity or whatever, that take certain verses that suit them to almost promote a type of behaviour or thought process. And this is not a phenomenon that is excluded in Islam.
And it's not just limited to issues to do with women. I mean, look at other things like terrorism, and God knows, you got anyone sitting down, picking up the Quran and reading a verse and thinking, hey, I know what this is about. Let's go on kuffars, or God knows. Okay, but then you know, the Quran is you know, is such a deep book. It's got many layers to it, you know, linguistically, historically, the context, you know, of which those ayat were you know, revealed, and it's not a simple matter.
So do you feel that there's almost a pressure, even in our religion, to be the perfect spouse, to be the perfect daughter, to be the perfect woman? Or is that a pressure that we're just putting on ourselves? Or
Of course there is. Of course there is. We are being told. You
of
know,
course there is a pressure. Or
yes,
Okay.
yeah, by the society, being told that you have to be, you know, as a woman, you know, the perfect, how to be as a perfect wife, how to be as a, you know, how to please your husband.
I mean,
But
I
is
think-
it in society
no, but
or in our
I think
faith?
everything's changed, because if you look at, you know, obviously our religion, getting married is 50% of our religion. That's how
half of your deen?
That's how important it is. But also, if you think about how things are changing in society, the definition of what a perfect wife or a perfect woman is changing rapidly. You know, the perfect woman is supposed to go to work. She's supposed to have a career and children. She's also supposed to be married, independent. She's supposed to be really feisty, attractive. You know, she
But
goes to the
modest at
gym.
the same time.
Yeah, exactly. So we've got all of these perfect ideals, and I think that what we seem to do is we just flip from one ideal to the other. So, you know, you can be the perfect Muslim wife, cooking the meals. Your husband comes home randomly with 6 of his friends, and oh look, she's put the spread
And
of
the
food
plate's
out,
brilliant.
and the kids are there, and they all read Quran and all this sort of stuff. So, you know, we have these ideals that we seem to fixate on, and they do flip between what our Islamic ideal is, but also what our society ideal is, and we've got this real battle of trying to be both. And there's just huge pressure on ourselves to
So do you
be
think-
everything all the time.
Do you think there's support in the community? Do you think we have a sisterhood where we say, like, you would have an elder who would say, you know, don't try and be everything at once. It's impossible. Do we have that?
don't.
And why don't we have it?
I don't know. Why don't we have
I think, I mean, I don't know. I think to some extent it's that thing of, I think sometimes we do have a mindset of, well, I suffered, so you're going to have to suffer too.
Like
get
being
over
in medical
it.
school, I did 72 hours, you do
There
it.
you go. And it's
Yeah.
that kind of, you know, put up and shut up and just get on with it. Put your socks on and get out there and be
Question,
everything.
I think as human beings, we seem to have lost touch with the reality of our condition. We are imperfect. Allah has created us like that.
Yeah.
وَخُلِقَ الْإِنسَانُ ضَعِيفًا. Human beings have been created weak, and so that's what we are. And to expect that we can be perfect, so are we in heaven on earth? No. Perfection is another realm, another dimension, not here.
But isn't it something that we should be striving?
Well, we
Or,
do.
you
We,
know,
we
to
do.
reach
We
perfection.
do. We do.
But what is
We
perfection?
must accept we can't reach
as much
it.
as we can.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's the whole point, because you know you're always striving, you're always
Why
purifying.
can't we just be normal?
What is normal?
Yeah.
Be yourself.
What is myself?
I don't know.
So
We
it's
could say this wherever you are. That's another discussion.
that's like accepting the lesser. I mean, why not always strive for the better?
But as human beings, we fluctuate on a scale. Sometimes we are more pious, other times we are lower.
Obviously, no one is saying, you know,
You know.
you're not gonna, you know, don't have to punish yourself
No,
for
but you
not.
have to have
but
a level
don't we
of
need to try?
Well, no, you are trying, but I think it's the reaction we have when we're not successful with that trying. I mean, what do we do when we can't do everything and we come home and
I think that's the point.
Yeah.
It's the reaction. It's how we, you
how
know,
we
we
deal
kind of
with
punished when we are
failure.
reaching that perfection. You know, everyone should be trying to reach that perfection, but the problem is how we are judged after that. And if you fail on one side or the other, then you're going to be judged as a woman, especially.
Under Islamic rules, there is this umbrella or label that we are required to comply with in terms of marital relations. Husn al-taba'u, you know, good marital relations. And from it, then of course, we all strive to perfect ourselves, to have good akhlaq, to have good cooking skills, etc., etc. But the reality is, hold on,
I don't have good cooking
I wouldn't-
skills. Sorry.
I developed over
I'm
the
lacking.
years.
I'm sorry. I'll work on it.
I
Something else
evolved.
to
I
do.
have pleased to say I evolved. It wasn't so good, but I evolved, I'm glad to say. Now here's the reality. Let's go back to the verse. In reality, according to Islamic traditions, the man has to provide for the woman in every sense of the word. So in other words, if he's got enough money, he's meant to be getting you servants, or otherwise, you know, he's meant to be spending all the money. That's right. You give him husn al-taba'u, He gives you the full support structure. Now, then to say, no, I'm going to be the cook, the cleaner, the nanny. In fact, the breastfeeding of your own child, he has to pay you for it.
Yeah.
So the husband battle work both ways. It's not a one-way road.
But can you back that up? Is that written anywhere? For our sisters who are watching, where does it say that? Because
they want to go home and use it.
Myself, actually.
You go to any Quran interpreting book and look at the verse and look at its interpretation. With it will come all the narrations of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wa alihi and Ahl Bayt, and you will see what it actually means. Because the explanation, the exegesis books will tell you that in this context it actually means that the man is responsible for payment of X, Y, Z, and it will give you the narrations and it will give you the meaning of the words. Look at Quran.
But also, I have to at this point back up my brothers here because yes, I'm equal opportunities, but I have heard sisters say, you know, when they're looking to get married, these are my demands. I don't have to cook and clean. All I have to do is look beautiful. You need to bring a servant in the house.
Fair point.
And they're
have
like,
you been reading my demand list?
I have, and I'm copying. So the poor guy's looking at them. Well, you know, I've just graduated from school. I don't even have money to cover my Oyster card.
Marry someone else then.
I think we're being a bit harsh.
Well, then he needs to compromise as well. If he can't afford to get her the servant, the supplies of the funds she needs for her to perform the husn taba'al in its true status that it is required, ideally in the world of perfection,
but can anyone,
then he has to compromise.
It doesn't work like
the
that.
rich can. The rich can.
But how many rich people are there?
How many rich ones are out there?
So, has feminism taken over? Do we have feminism in Islam? I mean, obviously we had, you know, famous people back in the day, in the past.
Yes.
But is there such a thing as feminism in Islam now in 2015?
There is, but it's like one of us was saying earlier. We are lacking female scholars who are prominent and known. Most of our scholars are the male. And I'm glad to say that there is a movement that a lot of our sisters are educating themselves. I mean, every time I go to one of the courses myself, see I have a dozen women of various age groups, youngest to oldest, all learning, all wanting to know more about women's rights, etc. So that's a positive development.
Are we becoming too independent, do you think?
If we're becoming too independent, is there such a thing as too independent?
Isn't
independence is good? A good thing?
No, I think what. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what you're referring to is a level of independence where we don't need men. And I think that's obviously a dangerous level to go to because you're denying something that is, you know, it's written within our teachings. Men and women are there as a perfect complement from one another. And when one goes out of balance, then the other falls out of balance quite quickly.
And the relationship is not just material.
Yeah, exactly. There's much more to it than that.
Well, if you're looking at it from an Islamic perspective, are we really independent? Because, say, if you're not married, your father is, you know, over you, and then when you get married, your husband is, and so technically you can't go off and do whatever you like without your husband's permission. So how independent are we? I ask you.
Good question. Very good question. There's the issue of mahram, and we need to look at the background of why there is a requirement of a mahram for a woman. Historically and even to present day, there is a tendency to want to exploit women one way or the other. So the presence of that male background, the way I see it, and I'm sure other people will disagree with me, and I'm not speaking here as a scholar, I'm not, I'm just looking at it as a lawyer who's analysed the going-ons here. What I see is a backup for the woman or support for the woman, as opposed to compulsion or oppression. It's meant to be a backup for the woman, it's not meant to be control mechanism.
Funny, because I was listening to some lecture about historical or whatever women in Islamic history, and their roles and how they used to live and etc. And it's amazing because we had some. Like there was this story of this lady who, I forgot her name, because I'm really bad with facts, but she was appointed to be kind of like a manager who goes around in the it was a time I think of Umar, I don't know which Khalifa it was, and he gave her the role of being managing the salesmen in the market to make sure that none of them is cheating. So she would literally go and, you know, she has the power of closing down your business if she saw that you know that you weren't. And you know, in those kind of positions at that time, you would think, you know, it's impossible for that kind of position to exist, you know, for a woman at that, especially at that time. And other examples.
Khadija Kubra alayha salam.
Khadija Kubra, she was a business lady.
Yes.
Khawla bint al-Azwar, I think she was also, I don't know, what was she? Was she like in a battle or something? She was a knight. She would go and fight in battles. There were, you know, women weren't only nurses in war, but they were actually fighters.
That's right. And 40 women actually escorted one of the wives of Rasulullah after the War of Camel from the place where they were warring against Imam Ali alayhi salam back to Medina. And because when she arrived in Medina, this woman screamed and said, "Look what he's done to me," meaning Imam Ali alayhi salam. He's put men who are not mahram to me. And then the women removed their cover and they said, "We are women." And yes,
which makes you think, really, which makes you start, just like pause there and think, okay, what is have we really understood what the role of woman is supposed like, how is it interpreted, how are we supposed to be behaving, what's our role compared to men? You know, if we look back, you know, in history and we see this kind of, you know, behavior from women. So how are we to interpret it today?
I think in the Muslim community, especially amongst women, I think there's almost, it's difficult to find a place to fit in. You have your sisters who are homemakers, and you have your sisters who are going to university, and you have your sisters who are independent for whatever reason, not that that's a bad thing, living their lives. And it's very difficult when we're talking about we don't have a female scholars that we can go to. You almost feel that you have to be part of one of those groups. That's what I find, and that it's very difficult trying to live in 2015, be a part of, you know, the world that we live in, and also stick to your Islamic principles, where 1 minute you're meant to be modest and humble and not seen and not heard, but you're going into work and you have 75 males that you have to manage.
Even your husband would be comparing you, you know, with all those, you know, modern role models, basically. You know, the way you're supposed to look, the way you're supposed to hold yourself.
So you don't have the support like, say, Khadija would, or the Prophet's daughter would, because she had other women who looked and supported her. We don't have that support system, so I find that very hard. Also, what I wanted to ask you was, when it comes to divorce, do you find that it's something easy that women can do? Is it easy to go up to a sheikh or Maulana or whoever and say, look, I'm having issues? Or even before you get married, you're writing your contract, you're very excited and you want to state, if the situation goes downhill, I am going to be the first one to initiate a divorce. And then they panic and you never hear from them again and they're out the door. So what is the situation and how do we address it?
How many stories have we heard of women who are stuck in abusive marriages and they cannot get out of it because scholars refuse to, you know, to issue them divorce. Or I don't know if it's refusing or whatever it is. It's like kind of, we have this idea in our society that divorce is a bad thing, which it is. No one likes to be divorced. No woman who, especially women I know, have, you know, you've got 3, 4, whatever kids and you know, and suddenly comes one day and she's like, I don't want to get divorced. Why? Because I feel like it. You know, it doesn't work like that. It must have been like some, you know, really good valid reasons behind it. But most, you know, how many stories have I heard of women who are struggling to get divorced because, well,
Well, socially, and I'm not being here defensive of the ulama. I have experienced that in one way or the other. You know, I'm a professional woman. I have
Hampton.
Yes. What I realize happening is this: they are very reluctant to grant divorce to women. not because they're worried that the women might become so independent that they can come, like transferring the role of divorce from the men to the women. Allah has put the idea of divorce in the hands of man to start with, and if that man is not doing it, the ulama are empowered to then intervene and do what is right. And there is a narration of the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam where a man comes to him crying, saying to him, "What's wrong with you, so and so?" And the man says, "My wife, she's asking for divorce." And Rasulullah says to him, "Are you paying her maintenance?" He says, "Yes, sir." "Are you treating her well?" "Yes, sir." Are you beating her?" "No, sir." "So everything is perfect there?" "Yep, sir." "Then call her to me." So he invites the woman to speak to him, and then he says to the woman, "Is your husband doing X, Y, and Z right?" She goes, "Yes, Ya Rasulullah, there's no complaint about him, there's nothing wrong with him." And then he says, "Why do you want him to divorce you?" It turns out from the conversation in the narration that I read in Arabic back years ago, this one is, he says, she said, the woman says to Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "Ya Rasulullah, are you happy for me to live kufr in Islam?" i.e. ingratitude, kufr in the ingratitude sense, within Islam, because ingratitude is a kind of kufr. And so would you like me to live within Islam in that sense of kufr? And Rasulullah says, "No, of course not, because he's there to make people worship Allah rather than the other way around." Understands that what she's saying to him is basically, I don't fancy this man. I can't give you the exact wording that he used to explain this concept. And that woman explained her concept very clearly. I don't fancy this man. He's not doing anything. He's not doing anything wrong to me, but I just don't fancy him. What it means, if you force me to remain with this man, it means I'm going to fancy other men. Therefore, I'm likely to be committing very serious sin.
Oppression of any sort.
And so he brings the man in and says grant her a divorce. And so that's how that woman is divorced. And so the ulama are empowered to exercise that discretion.
Yeah, but realistically, how? I mean, as you know, we've all said, we've all heard various stories.
Yeah.
You know, actually, I know of a story that was in London. Someone that was very high. Despite sort of there being domestic abuse and all those sorts of things, the actual person in question still insisted that this woman try.
Yes, they always do that. They
even at the cost of there being, you know, in an abusive relationship, you need to go home and you need to try.
Yeah.
So my concern is that this whole thing about divorce, again, yes, it's taboo. No one wants to mention it. People are shocked, you know, if you hear people come out and say, "Oh, yes, I'm divorced." It's like no one should admit it, and I think there's a bit of a sort of cultural thing coming in here as well.
Back to that same topic as well of the pressure. You know, the blame is always on the woman.
Well, this is you're not trying hard enough. You need to be doing this. You need to go home and make yourself look nice. You need to sit with him. And then on the flip side of it, you're like, well, he's put on 5 stone since we've got married. Only. He's still wearing the same clothes. That, you know, he's not bought any new clothes. So I mean, this is the thing. You have to sort of. There needs to be more.
But why are people shocked that people get divorced? If it's
no idea.
And what I want
to breakdown of society. They don't want that breakdown of society, because if you look at it this way, if people have been divorced, you know, each becomes single. Human beings have basic human needs apart from food and sleeping, and there is a risk of sinful behavior. That's why they call marriage half your deen. Because it protects you from that grave.
But also it's a test as well, because you're, you know, living with anyone for too long, it gets a bit too much. But why is it that you think brothers freak out when you mention
if you
want that clause?
It's like rejection to them psychologically.
It's pride, isn't it?
Rejection.
It's like showing their power as well. It's their role as a man. You know, you can't come. You're not going to divorce me. I'm not going to divorce you because you asked it, unless I want it. Okay,
I just heard
I'm going to get divorced.
I just heard of a section in our community where actually women are pushing to have that clause in their concepts to get a divorce, and most of the people who are initiating divorce seem to be women. So the guys are panicking a bit. So I don't know, I think there needs to be more education. I keep coming back to this, but there needs to be more education in sisterhood. Kind of like a big brother, big sister scheme where you are informed, because a lot of sisters don't even know they have the right to ask for a divorce, or that they should even have a contract that stipulates. They just presume that, you know, we both like each other, alhamdulillah, everything's going to be fine. So again, I think
more women scholars would help a lot. You know, availability of women counsellors even, you know, because when you go to a mosque and you're asking for mediation, someone to come and help you, you know, between you and your husband, most of the time you're going to go and find a guy, you know, a man who's going to be helping you. And most of the time that the man would be talking to you about your responsibilities towards your husband and how you can make the house be, you know, a happier place, and how to please him. How, when he comes back tired from work, you know, don't nag with, you know, at him. Don't, you know, they give this kind of advice.
But on the flip side of it, I think that you know, the reason why this is so popular and this clause is being brought up is because people know of situations where women have been in a very difficult relationship and they've not been allowed to divorce, and that has been the husband, B, the family support that, and C, you know, whichever the local, you know, figure in the community has also said, no, you shouldn't be divorcing as well. So I think that is a response to actually a lot of oppression going on. So women are like, well, hang on a minute, how am I going to...
I was just thinking in my mind, if we did have this service in our community, what type of person would I want to provide me with advice? I think I would want someone who... It's a lot like me, who has lived in the West. I don't think I could really relate to somebody who's just come from Papua New Guinea, for the sake of argument, who cannot relate to my experiences. And I'm just keeping it PC, Papua New Guinea. I have nothing against Papua New Guinea. But I'm just saying that someone who has lived and someone who can see what it's like in the community. I think a lot of the time with sisters, you can be intimidated with each other. This one looks really like she's in the Stone Ages and I'll bless her, or this one seems too out there, and you can get almost too cliquey, and it's like, well, I don't want you quoting hadiths, I can't live with this man.
That's true.
So, and I think, you know, we should also push for brothers to be educated. I think a lot of brothers feel intimidated by us now because we're all waving our flags. We have rights, which we do, but I want, you know, my 40 acres and a donkey, you know, as my wedding gift. That's what I want. And a donkey. But
are more, you know, I think they're more daring to ask for divorce now because of the economical independence as well.
Look how vocal. I mean, look, there's 4 of us on TV, so we're obviously we've got somewhere because, you know, we're more vocal now. We are coming out and saying things. So yeah, maybe there is an element of guys looking at us thinking, hang on a minute, what are these women doing?
People from here who understand our Western lifestyle, if you like, there is a growing movement to develop young ulama here who are English born or English born out, who understand our needs in local. And there's a lot of charity setting up to be addressing this issue, I'm glad to say. So it's not going to be the same as before. Don't worry about Papua New Guinea. You're going to have proper local English geezer telling you what's your right.
A geezer.
A geezer.
This has been a great topic. I've really enjoyed the conversation. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. We're hoping that you will join us next time, inshallah. Till the next episode. Assalamu alaikum.
If you have been affected by any of the issues raised in Ladies First, then the following organizations may be able to provide help and advice.